Welcome to the Real Lost Boss podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 56 of the Real Lost Boss podcast. Is it simply all about calories? So, I'm a big advocate for calorie counting. It's pretty much what I've done from the very start of my weight loss journey. And it's helped me go from being well over 500 pounds to losing half my body weight. And I put a lot of posts on social media talking about calories in food, talking about calories in, calories out. And I get loads of comments saying calorie counting is outdated, it didn't work in the 80s, it won't work now. I then get lots of other comments like fat loss, weight loss, it's nothing to do with calories. It's to do with what you're eating. It's to do with macros. It's to do with balancing your hormones. Well, let's set it all straight. That is what we are going to do in this episode. So, let me address some of those myths. And they are myths, and I'll tell you why. First one, calorie counting is outdated. It's something that was done in the 80s, didn't work then, isn't going to work now. Well, first of all, weight issues actually wasn't a big problem in the 80s, but one person did have a big weight issue in the 80s, and that was me. And I'll be honest with you, there was nothing about calorie counting in the 80s. I was taken to my GP, recommended by my school, 1988, 1989, maybe something like that, because I had a severe weight issue. And when I went into my GP, trust me, it was a long time ago, but it is still sat in my head. And my GP basically said, Neil needs to go on a calorie controlled diet. That was it. Calories were never mentioned after that. There was no talk of energy balance. This is how many calories Neil burns. This is how many calories Neil should be eating. No, it was basically, here's a couple of leaflets on changing eating patterns or changing what you do eat to lose weight. Went away with that, went to the GP in maybe 6 weeks' time, got on the scales, didn't lose a jot of weight. Don't get me wrong. I didn't follow the leaflets. And if I had done, maybe I would have lost some weight. But what I want to emphasize here, there was nothing about calorie counting, calories in, calories out, things like that. Anyway, when I went back to the GP and I hadn't lost any weight, he then recommended I go to a dietitian. And I'm like, right, this is where I'm going to get taught a calorie controlled diet. I didn't really think like that because I didn't really understand. I didn't know what was going to go on. But the dietitian did pretty much nothing different to the GP. I remember going in there, sitting there. Neil needs to go on a calorie control diet. That was it. There was no other mention of calories. And then my mum got a big list. This is what Neil needs to stop eating. This is what Neil should be eating. Yes, going to extremes. These crazy diets where you cut everything out. You just eat certain types of food. And that gives you the mentality, this food makes me fat, this food makes me thin. Again, nothing to do with calories, just extreme dieting. So when these people jump on social media and go, calorie counting's been around since the 80s. Now, calories have been around for way longer than the 80s, right? They're a unit of energy. They're a measurement of energy. But calorie counting, this is just my own personal experience, and I have got personal experience. A lot of people that comment this, I don't think were even born in the 80s. I was. And I experienced weight loss in the 80s. And yeah, calorie counting it was never something that was pushed upon me. What was pushed upon me, which is still pushed upon people in this day and age, is extreme dieting, fad dieting, cutting all this out, not eating this, not eating that. And don't get me wrong. Look, a lot of the foods that were recommended to me were healthier. They were more nutrient dense. They were less calories. So, in retrospect, that is a calorie controlled diet if you cut out a lot of high calorie foods and replace it with a lot of lower calorie foods. But calorie counting, actually looking at numbers, was never mentioned. Now let's address all the other bits and pieces that we get. No, I'm not going to address them. I'll tell you why. The rest of this podcast is going to address everything else there. It's about what you're eating. It's about macros. It's about hormones. Yes, the rest of this podcast will answer all those questions. So, is weight loss fat loss? There is a slight difference between weight loss and fat loss. I'm not going to go into that in this podcast. If you've watched all my podcasts, I will have covered it in previous ones. But basically, to continuously lose weight, you need to continuously lose fat. And we only continuously lose fat by consuming less calories than we burn. So fat loss, which leads to continuous weight loss, is simply about, right, or is directly about calorie control. Calories in versus calories out. Nothing else matters directly. This is a big word. So if you're sat there now chomping at the bit going, no, Neil, you're wrong. Please just hear me out. It does not matter what the hormones are doing in your body. It does not matter what your food is made up of. It does not matter nutrient breakdown. So nutrient breakdown is basically, macronutrient breakdown. So macronutrients, we have three: proteins, fats, carbs. And a lot of people think you need to eat a certain amount of protein, certain amount of carbohydrates, and a certain amount of fat. And they need to be eaten in a particular way to trigger fat loss. Absolute nonsense. You can eat nothing but chicken breast, which is protein. As long as you eat it within a calorie deficit, you will lose fat. Likewise, if you ate nothing but chicken breast in a calorie surplus, you would gain fat. Fat. You could eat nothing but butter for an entire week. If you eat that within a calorie deficit, you will lose fat. Likewise, if you eat nothing but butter in a calorie surplus, you'll gain fat. Carbohydrates, the dreaded carbs. White bread. You can eat nothing but white bread for an entire week within a calorie deficit. You will lose body fat. Again, eat it within a calorie surplus. You will gain body fat. What your food is made up of, the types of food you eat, the macro breakdown, whether your diet's 100% protein, 100% fat, 100% carbs, whether it's 30% protein, 20% fat, 50% carbs, or 50% protein, 30% fat, 20%. It doesn't make a difference. It really doesn't. Your body, when it comes to fat loss, just sees calories going in. Think of it like paying money into a bank account. If you're going to pay £100 into a bank account, right, you could pay that £100 in with five £20 notes. You could pay it in with 10 £10 notes, 20 £5 notes, 100 £1 coins, all different denominations of money. But when you look at your bank account, it just says paid in £100. Your bank account doesn't break down where that money has come from, whether it's a 20, a 10, a 5, or a coin. It just says plus £100. And that is exactly the same when it comes to fat loss in and out of the body. Again, using the analogy of money, if you go to a cash point and draw out £100 and it comes out as 4 £20 notes and 2 £10 notes, your bank account just says minus £100. And again, that is exactly the same when we burn calories. It doesn't really look at, it's got so many calories from metabolism, so many calories from exercise, so many calories from going for a walk. It just looks at calories out, just the same as it looks as calories in. So let's say you ate a chicken breast, 200 calories. A double cheeseburger from McDonald's, 440 calories. An apple, 80 calories. Let me do the maths here. 720, and then you eat a chocolate bar that's 280 calories. All your body sees going in is 1,000 calories. Now, don't get me wrong, in terms of health, in terms of things that might support the body for different bodily functions, the body will see all those foods differently. They'll see, the chicken breast is high in protein. They'll see the apple high in vitamins, minerals, fiber, things like that. It will see the cheeseburger. Yes, it'll have protein and maybe a smidge of fiber in it, but it'll also, a lot of saturated fat. But again, that does not make a difference to fat loss, weight loss. It just sees 1,000 calories, so 1,000 calories going in. If I sit in my chair, I burn about 100 calories an hour through my metabolism. If I sit in a chair, I am sat in a chair, by the way, if you are listening to this and not watching it, and I sit here for 10 hours, my body sees 1,000 calories going out. It doesn't make a difference whether those calories are from my metabolism sat in a chair, or if over 5 hours I sit in a chair, that's 500 calories, and then I get up and go for a walk, and that's 200 calories, and I then go to the gym and train, that's 300 calories. It doesn't go, right, these calories from walking, and there's certainly the calories from moving, is more, it's not. It's 300, 200, 500, it's 1,000 calories. So directly, it is simply calories in, calories out. And it doesn't matter what your food's made up of. It doesn't matter what your hormones are doing. It does not matter what is going on in your body. It doesn't matter if you are 18. It doesn't matter if you are 80. It doesn't matter if you are male. It doesn't matter if you are female. As long as you're in a calorie deficit, you will consistently lose body fat. And the harsh truth is that a lot of people don't like to hear, if you are in a calorie deficit and you're not losing body fat, the honest answer is you're not in a calorie deficit. You might think you are, but I hate to break it to you, you are not. So, directly, weight loss, fat loss, yes, is simply all about calories. But what we need to understand is the way we do things, and this is what I class as indirectly, that will influence how consistent you are at sticking to a calorie deficit. So for example, I said there, if you ate nothing but butter for a week within a calorie deficit, you would lose body fat. That is true. But what is the likelihood of someone only eating butter for a week? Practically nil. What is the likelihood of someone eating butter for a week, if they did just eat butter for a week, and being able to stick to a calorie deficit? Again, I'm going to say this, practically nil, because butter, don't get me wrong, someone's going to go, well, I wouldn't eat much butter if I could only eat butter. Maybe you wouldn't, but what I'm trying to say is butter is very calorie dense. So if your diet is purely made up of high fat foods, which are going to be very calorie dense, the chances of you sticking to a calorie deficit or being in a calorie deficit is obviously going to be a lot slimmer. Something like chicken, well, certainly chicken breast, is very low in calories. It's very nutrient dense, full of protein, which will fill you up, and it's low in calories. So the chances of you being in a calorie deficit, if you ate nothing but chicken for the week, would be extremely high. So we do need to look at how we structure our diet. Now, if you are only going to eat one food, whether it be chicken or butter or white bread, as I said, we also need to understand that the likelihood of us doing that, again, is very, very slim. It will become very boring, very monotonous, very repetitive. And when we do things like that, it makes things unsustainable. And this is the whole issue about, a lot of people saying, just stick to calories. It doesn't work like that. Because the way we do things, the way we put ourselves in a calorie deficit, that is what's going to determine the sustainability of it, the longevity of it, how long we are going to stick to being on a diet, as it were. So is it simply about calories? Directly, science, thermogenics, calories in, calories out, energy balance. Again, if you're a regular watcher or listener of my podcast, you'll have heard all those terms. Yes. Indirectly, though, the way we do things, basically the way we live our entire lifestyle, will determine how successful we are at sticking to this deficit, the sustainability, the longevity. And this is how we should be doing things. Well, what I'm going to tell you for the next part of this podcast. I did most of these things from the beginning of my weight loss journey. And at the time, I didn't realize the benefits of them, but I did them. And now I understand the benefits of them. And I understand now why it really helped me to be so consistent. So I managed to stick to things for so long, which I'd never done in the past. Now, why I first started looking at calories was because I wanted to lose weight in a way that I'd never done before. I'd never done calories in, calories out. I'd never done calorie counting. Like I say, dragged to my GP, dragged to a dietitian, was told I need to go on a calorie controlled diet, but was never took to the root, was never, this is how many calories Neil burns. And do you know what? In all honesty, I reckon in the 80s, it would have been very, very hard to go down that route. And that's why it's such a stupid comment when people say, oh, things we did in the 80s, didn't work then. We didn't do it in the 80s. Actual calorie counting for weight loss is a fairly new phenomenon. Now, don't get me wrong. I can only talk about this from 2014 onwards because that's when I started my own weight loss journey and that's when I started looking a lot. And correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone else can think of anybody previous to 2014 or actually previous to 2018, you'll see why that date's important shortly, that was a massive advocate for calories in, calories out, energy balance, talking about thermodynamics for weight loss, then please let me know in the comments. But for me, I started looking at calories in 2014 with luck, if I'm being honest with you. Like I say, I wanted to lose weight in a totally different way than I'd ever lost weight before. And because I think it kind of intrigued me. I'm a bit of a numbers person. I'm an accountant by trade. So looking at losing weight, not wanting to go down the fad diet route, and something must have stuck in my head from saying you need to go on a calorie controlled diet, or maybe I looked into different bits and pieces, and you see it on all, like weight loss tools, shakes and this, that and the other, may help with, the small print, may help with weight loss as part of a calorie controlled diet. Whoa, calories in, calories out. Again, totally naive to it because there's no information or there wasn't any information out there. And I tried to find it. So in the end, when I started my own weight loss journey, I literally got my calorie allowance from a nutritional label back in 2014. Now it just says adult. In 2014, it split between men and women, and it recommended a certain amount of calories for men and a certain amount of calories for women. And it said the average male, 2,000 to 2,500. I'm 37 stone. I'm 6'5". I'm not the average male. So I'm going to go top end. And that's where I went. I went 2,500 calories. It was a random number. Bit of a fluke, because as it turns out, it was actually pretty bang on. It was a sustainable amount. It was something I managed to stick to. And in my head, I'm like, if I eat the average calories that a male should be having, and I'm not the average male because I'm morbidly obese, surely that's going to help me lose weight. And it did. But like I say, it was a bit of a shot in the dark at first. The first time I ever really started to learn and understand about calories in, calories out was when I decided to do my personal training qualifications. And when I started to do my personal training qualifications, just being me, or me being me, sorry, where I want to be the best, right? And I do. People always said that, whatever you do, you give it, you're always number one. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't a boast, but people were like, if you're going to be fat, and I was very fat, you're not just going to be a bit overweight or obese. No, you're going to be morbidly obese. Neil, you're going to be 37 stone, in the top 3% of heaviest people in the country. I read that somewhere. I tried to find data of, average weights in the UK, and I was in the top 1%, sorry. I think I was 1%. Was it 3% or 1%? I can't remember. Anyway, I was one of the heaviest people in the UK. So yeah, I don't do things by halves. If I'm going to be a personal trainer, I'm going to be the best, right? And I mean that. And I'm not saying everyone thinks or says I am the best, but in my head, I want to do the best I can to be the best, to have the knowledge. So I started doing loads of research, looking into things. And the first person that really spelled it out to me, because I didn't know what a calorie deficit was until, 4 years into my weight loss journey. I genuinely didn't. I knew I was eating an amount of calories, and I knew eating that amount of calories was causing me to lose a good amount of weight. I didn't understand why. But 2017, when I signed up to my personal training course, I started doing a bit of research, using social media, using Google. I'm not saying it's the best source of information, but if you've got a bit of logic about you and a bit of common sense, it's not bad. And that's when James Smith first started to pop up. Now, I don't know if you know James Smith. He's, at the time, he was a young lad. And he sort of caught the early trend of being an influencer on social media for weight loss, fat loss. And he's a personal trainer, and he lived in the UK, and then he moved to Oz and became a PT. And then he started doing social media. Started doing a lot on Facebook to start off with, and then I was obviously branched out into Instagram and this, that, and the other. And he used to have a big saying: you lose fat from being in a calorie effing deficit. And a lot of people used to call, he's calmed down a lot since then. He's become an author, and he's changed his tact a little bit. But at the time, people used to call him the Gordon Ramsay of weight loss, fat loss, PTing, because he was quite bullish in front of the camera. He used to swear quite a bit. He was very straight to the point. And I'm not saying I'm a massive fan of his delivery. I'm not saying I'm a massive fan of I'm a fan of his content. I might not be a massive fan of his delivery. But he was one of them. Cut out the BS. All these people saying, this is bad for you, that's bad for you, this makes you fat, this makes you thin. Nope. It's all about being in a calorie effing deficit. That was his thing. And he built a big following. And like I say, whether you like the way he puts his content over or not, his actual content is decent. He speaks the truth. There's no BS. There's no fad dieting. There's no, standing in supermarkets, demonizing food. There's no lies. It's just similar to what I do, but obviously I put it across in a different way. From him talking about that all the time, that's then what triggered me into looking into it. And I'm like, that makes sense. I've eaten 2,500 calories. I've probably burnt this. I've probably burnt that. I've probably burnt the other. Right? And then, by eating this, I've had this calorie deficit. That's why I've lost 10 stone in my first year, and I've lost this. And then when I've gone on all-inclusive holidays, that's why I've gained a bit back. And that's when I started to learn about, scales fluctuating. I didn't really understand those till probably 2017, 2018, understanding water retention and gaining excess food weight, water weight. Again, it's logic. And I have got quite a logical brain at times, probably too logical for my own good in some ways. But, when I started looking into things, I was like, right, I get it. And from the start of my weight loss journey, I started looking at calories. I ate 2,500 calories a day. Some people would absolutely collapse if you gave them that calorie allowance. I didn't. I ate it. Some people, I get so many clients saying, I can't lose weight eating that. I don't want, this, that, and the other. I'm like, look, at the end of the day, this is how many you burn, right? And if you want this to be sustainable, you need to eat this many. This is where so many people go wrong. Crash dieting, burning 3,000 calories a day and trying to stick to 1,200. Ain't going to happen long term. For me, I stumbled across a healthy, sustainable calorie allowance. Alongside that, I did eat volume foods. I did improve my overall diet, but I didn't cut things out. I had some balance, and, the way I did things, I sort of worked on an 80-20 split. It's a very common split within the fitness industry. 80% work hard, 20% play hard, 80% healthy, nutritious diet, 20% eat whatever you want. Works with money a little bit. Spend 80% of your wages on the essentials, your mortgage, rent, council tax. Hopefully you should have 20% left over, and you can go and spend that on your trainers and your t-shirts and your holidays. And if you follow that split for a lot of things, you just end up with a really good balance. And that's kind of what I followed. So I didn't over restrict myself, or tried not to. Ate a good amount of calories, ate the protein, ate the fibre, to be fair, because I did used to eat a lot of fruits and veggies. Both those things help to fill you up. I introduced an increase in movement. I'm not saying it is essential. I think getting steps in is essential. I think improving your overall movement is essential because, yes, it increases your calorie burn, which gives you more freedom with the amount of calories you can eat and still be in a deficit, but it's also amazing for mental health. And again, a little bit consciously and a little bit subconsciously, I massively worked on my head. I massively worked at what's going on in here to stop things like emotional eating. So I put a whole lifestyle together. So although I've lost over half my body weight from being in a calorie deficit, and if I hadn't got into a calorie deficit, if I hadn't consumed less calories than I burned, which for me is about probably knocking on 950,000. Those are the numbers. A stone in weight is 49,000 calories. So if you want to lose a stone, you need to consume 49,000 calories less than you burn. And when you do that, whether you do that in a couple of weeks, whether you do that in a couple of months, whether you do that in 6 months, time is irrelevant. You just need to consume 49,000 calories less than you burn for a stone. I'm currently about 19 stone down. So from when I started my weight loss journey, don't get me wrong, there's been periods where I've been in a bigger deficit, periods where I've not been in a deficit, periods where I've been maintenance, periods where I've been in surplus and gained a bit back, yeah. But from the beginning of February 2014 to recording this podcast now to where I'm at on my journey, over that period of time, I have consumed 950,000 calories less than I have burned. That is the reason why I have lost the weight stroke fat that I have lost directly. No other reason. Not because I've balanced my hormones out, not because I've cut out certain foods, not because I followed a strict macronutrient breakdown. No, simply because over that time frame, I have consumed 950,000 calories less than I've burned. It is the way, indirectly, the way I've done things that's allowed me to stick to it, to have such a big calorie deficit over that time frame. And that is looking at calories weekly rather than daily to give me flexibility and freedom. Using that 80-20 split mentality with food. 80% as healthy and nutritious as possible. 20% whatever I want, because that stops you feeling overly restricted. It stops cravings ramping up in your body to the point where you feel like you need to binge. It's just a really good balance. Also, making 80% of your diet as best you can as healthy and nutritious, it does help your mental health. It does increase your energy levels. All these have knock-on effects. I call it a domino effect. All these little things that we put into place, like, you know, not one domino, next thing 1,000 have gone. And that's kind of everything we do links to something else. So I've eaten a healthy, sustainable calorie allowance. I've looked at that calorie allowance weekly instead of daily to give me flexibility with my eating. I've given myself flexibility with eating because I've not ruled out anything. I've never demonized a single food. Oh, that's full of sugar. Oh, that's full of fat. Oh, that makes you fat. No. Certain foods are nutrient dense. Certain foods aren't. Certain foods are calorie dense. Certain foods aren't. Certain foods are easy to overconsume and could be detrimental to health and calorie intake. Certain foods are the opposite of that. It's all about balance. I've gone for daily walks. I've done regular exercise. I've got as hydrated as possible. None of these things directly, you can sit on your bum 24 hours a day, not drink a jot of water, not eat any healthy foods whatsoever. And if you stick to a calorie deficit, you'll lose body fat. But the chances of you sticking to a calorie deficit by just sitting on your bum 24/7 and not putting some tools into place is going to be very slim. Looking at calories right, eating the right amount of calories, having a good balance with your food intake, doing things to help your head, walks, exercise, healthier foods, things like hydration, high protein diets help fill you up, high fiber diets help fill you up, getting some volume foods in to help fill you up, structuring your calories correctly throughout the day, trying not to go long periods of time without eating, which can just ramp hunger up. All these little tips and tricks are what I've put into place. Like I say, at the start of my journey, I did not realize how effective they were. As I've gained the experience and I've been in the fitness industry, health industry, weight loss, whatever you want to call it, over 8 years now, and I've been on this journey over 11 years. So I have got a lot of experience, my own experience and from my own clients. My one-to-one weight loss plan is based, and that is how I teach my clients. Yes, I give them calories because directly that is what we need to stick to lose the body fat, but it's how we do it. And I've evolved what I did into, I'm going to put this out there, probably one of the most successful weight loss plans on the market. And I can say that because in the last 4 years, my clients combined have lost over 15,000 pounds of body fat. I do check-ins every fortnight with my clients, but I have certain clients that check in 1 week, certain clients that check in the following week. So I do check-ins every Friday and I keep a running tally. So I have a little spreadsheet that connects and I just enter in. When someone's lost, I enter it in. When someone's lost, I enter it in. When someone's lost. And we are over 15,000 pounds of body fat combined in 4 years. That isn't a fluke. That is my clients directly sticking to their calorie allowance because that is the only way we lose body fat. But it's also my clients following or using the tools that I put into place that allows them to be so successful. In 2024, I had nearly double figure clients hit £100 fat loss. They've done that because they've been in a calorie deficit. And if they hadn't been, they wouldn't have lost that body fat. It's how we put people into a calorie deficit or how you go into a calorie deficit that is going to determine the short-term and, more importantly, long-term success of your weight loss journey. So, is it simply all about calories? The honest answer is yes and no, I suppose. There we go. That is the end of episode 56. It's also the end of season 2. The Real Lost Boss podcast started in July 2023. Now, season 1 to season 2 to season 3, nothing changes, and I keep the episode numbers rolling. So the next episode will be episode 57. But, the next podcast will be out in July, and it will be what I'm going to class as the start of season 3. So I just want to say thank you so much for the support for the last, I can't believe I've been doing the podcast for 2 years. I get a lot of positive feedback. I'm still trying to build it up. I feel the more people that see it, the more help people are going to get and the more weight loss success there's going to be in the world. So if you could keep pushing it out there, telling your friends, telling your family, anyone that might be struggling with their weight loss, pushing them towards the Real Lost Boss, I would massively appreciate that. And until next time, for the first episode of season 3, make sure you are bossing your weight loss.